Hello, everyone. I'm excited to announce that our first episode is here. Our first guest is a very special one, Dr. Francie W. She's here to talk about why learning to read in the mother tongue at an early age is a game changer for English language learners. Early reading programs are so important because it gives kids a strong foundation in their native language, making it easier for them to learn English later on. With the right support and the right time, we can help close the learning gap and give every child a better chance to succeed. Over 20 years ago, while I was in college, right here in Philadelphia, I met many supported people, some of whom continue to impact my life to this day. One of those people was my professor, Dr. Udford. She has a PhD in multilingual and multicultural education and has worked over 40 years to improve the life of her students. It goes without saying, she has been a major influence in my life, encouraging me to dream bigger, to pursue higher goals, and to become involved in many activities as possible while I was in college. Fast forward to today, she has become an essential part of our nonprofit as the Director of Education for the Carmen Foundation. Please welcome her to the podcast to share one of her inspiring projects.
No more shadows in your way. Through the darkness, find your light. Del Carmen says you'll be okay.
It is a pleasure to see Dr. Francie Woolford to be here. And for the people who don't know you, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Well, first, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here. It's an honor for me. As you know, Carmen was my student 20 years ago, and I gave her a lot of homework and spared her a lot. And now it's payback time. She was an excellent student, and I'm just not surprised at all that this wonderful foundation has evolved in the last few years since the pandemic. And I worked for 30 years at Community College of Philadelphia here in Philadelphia, and I'm from California, where I worked before that. And I retired in 2022, and that's when she got me. She said, will you be the director of education? And I said, I'm retired. So I said, well, what are the expectations? But then what happened was I couldn't say no because I was so impressed with how professional everything was set up. And so with my experience teaching English as a second language and freshman college English, at community college, I've been trying to help with some grant writing, and I also had an idea for a project. So Carmen asked me to come here and talk to you about it today. I'm excited.
Yeah, you have been amazing, Francis, for helping us since 2022 until now and many more years to come to help the children in need. Francis has a passion for education, so I'm happy to have her here, and she has an exciting project to share with us. So can you tell us about your project?
So I had a thought when I was looking at the grants. We were looking at grants and what kind of grants. And there was a grant. It had to do with after school time. So spending time after school learning. And if you look at the research, reading is the most important skill for success in college. Of course, other skills are important, but if you are if you're able to read and you read widely, then you can go into any classroom with a lot of confidence, and you also can catch on quickly and become part of the academic community. So even if your writing skills are a little rough or other skills, you can learn from that, but the reading needs to be top notch. And in Philadelphia, there's a push for all the children to be reading at grade level by the 4th grade. So, and that's what the grants are asking. So I wanted to focus on kindergarten through 3rd grade, after school reading program.
Okay. And the programs that you have that we wanted to implement in Venezuela was from younger kids to teenagers.
Yeah, the program in Venezuela was more teacher training so that we could bring to Venezuela a certain type of teaching and learning called participatory education. And I also wanted to do this in the after-school program. All day long, kids are learning and following what the teacher's saying, and, there might be some rote memorization in there. But in this program, because it's after school, I wanted it to be a community where we're forming a culture of reading and everybody's participating. So for the teacher training in Venezuela, I also wanted to encourage the teachers to have the kids participate in their own learning and build on that from where they are and use their suggestions, incorporate that. And so you would do activities together. It wouldn't be just filling in the blanks type of learning how to read and answer comprehension questions.
It is like you mentioned to me, that was like a critical thinking, right? One of the things that really impacted me when I read your report was the critical thinking part for children, because usually when we were young, I was taught just to memorize, right? And now things have changed. And after you told me about how that program works, I thought that was amazing to implement here in Philadelphia and in Venezuela. So how in Philadelphia will work?
Yeah. So in both cases, there are 3 requirements for the types of books we read. And we didn't even talk about the fact that I wanted them to read the books in Spanish. So that's a separate thing. We'll talk about why I'm choosing for them to want to read in Spanish. So, but the 3 requirements for the books that we choose, the first one is that the book has to be what I call a page turner. So the kid is reading and they cannot wait to turn the page and see what happens next. That's a must. If it's not exciting reading, I don't want it. Throw it in the garbage. Not accepting it. The second requirement is that I want the subject matter of the book to be something they're learning. So it's going to be something, it could be from STEM, which stands for science, technology, engineering, mathematics, or it could be another academic subject, could be history, right? But I want it to be an academic subject, but they're not noticing that because they're just solving a detective problem,
Right.
and they might need to use math for that. Or they might have to use the scientific method to solve a problem. They might be following a character, like in kindergarten, the character is a little drop of water, and the little drop of water becomes snow. And they're following the character. It isn't until later that they realize, oh, wow, you don't create or destroy energy, it just changes form. But they don't have to learn that deductively. What they do is they go through the character's journey, and the little drip of water becomes a snowflake, right? And then it can melt and become water again. And they can go home and do an experiment and put the water in the ice cube, and put it in the freezer and take it out and melt it. So this is the idea for the second requirement. I want it has to be, so I was looking at some books yesterday in a bookstore, and they were exciting, they were page turners, but I'm looking for, well, what are they learning? Is there anything they're learning that's going to help them in school? So that leads me to the third point, and also all 3 are very important. There is no rote memorization in this. So that means that in school they do that, and there's a place for memorization in school. If you don't remember what we did yesterday, I can't move on today, So we got to have some memorization. But in the after school, we need to have some fun. We need to have some activities. We need to learn. And the children need to be using creative imagination. Maybe it's going to go into fantasy, but we follow that. We allow their minds to use their minds however they're going, right? And you play with that.
And I think it's great. And where you were talking about the books, so what kind of topics do you choose for a child of K3? The age is what, 5 years old? When it's K3?
Yeah, that was the example of the drop of water, for example.
Okay.
Yeah. So the topics are, it has to do with the STEM, the topics. The subject is reading, right? And so it has to be exciting, suspenseful, could be detective. Usually a lot of those are fun. And then what's going to happen next? And then they're learning something as long as it's an academic subject. The books I have right now, A Wrinkle in Time is my choice for grade 3.
Okay.
And yes, and so all the books for kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, they're all series. It could be there in Spanish and in English, so both.
Okay, so the idea of this project for kids is they will be able to read in Spanish.
Yeah, okay. So that's an important point, right? So why in Spanish? You say, well, they should be learning to read in English. They're in the United States. They have to be successful in English. But the problem is that if you've never learned to read, here these kids come here, right, with their parents. They're speaking Spanish at home.
Right.
Parents might be working, not have time to do a lot of reading in Spanish with kids. They didn't go to school and learn how to read before they came here. So now, here they are, if you can imagine, in a foreign country, another strange country. They're learning a new language. And imagine, you go sit in school. It's not the language for home. Even just think of a simple word like the word night, day, night, right? And then you're looking at the word and there's like G-H, what? It doesn't make any sense. So what they need to do, what if, most people, you go to school, you learn how to read in your native language, right?
Right.
So, okay, why can't we do that? They're going to go to school and learn English. We do not have, for ELLs, they're called, English language learners, there isn't enough support, in schools. There's just not. So, okay, so they'll face that during the day at school. But after school, they get to go into a room where people are speaking Spanish. Maybe even we'd invite their mother and father to come if they don't have to work that day, And we have bilingual aides there, and they're in groups, and people are speaking the language of their home. And then now, depending on the grade, they're going to read a story in that language. And you can imagine, I don't know if you can imagine what the brain goes through, but, a certain language you speak at home, then you go to school, and imagine how much they have to do to decipher, all of that in English. So if they could look at letters and be speaking and playing and interacting, then we get to the academic subjects. And it's not rote memorization. There are no formal tests. There's only, kind of formative evaluation formative evaluation is where you ask questions to make sure they understood so far.
So there's no test? Well, it's activities. Oh, I like that. No test. Activities is more creative, and they have maybe the time and, to play it and to think about it. Instead of just worrying about, I'm going to have a test, I'm going to be graded for what I'm going to do. This will open them the opportunity to think.
Right, and that's what formative evaluation is, not summative, like at the end. So, yeah, exactly. So as you're going through, there might be some questions you ask because you want to make sure you don't want to think that they're completely lost. Make sure they're following the thread of the story, right, and not thinking something else, So, there are activities that they do because they will be eventually. So you said critical thinking, I think, is what you were talking about.
Right.
So then, when they get to a point where they're doing the activities, there's a freedom to use their imagination with the science or, the scientific method, let's say, that's in the first grade one. It actually, the activities are that they follow the scientific method, and they have to, there's these little worksheets, and they go through and they learn it like as if it were the back of their hand, just like, no big deal. That's what you do next, right? You test and so that's how they inductively, they ingrained in them. So then when they do go to school and they have to do the rote memorization, they have more of a natural feeling for what it's all about. And, the studies have shown that once you do learn how to read in your native language, those skills can be transferred to another language. In fact, the best readers have done it that way, in that order, not the other way around.
Wow.
So that would have to be, the program would be in Spanish. Not that there wouldn't be, people, using English. All the series are in both languages. But the focus is on Spanish so that there can be a better transference. There can be a community there. Everybody's participating so that it can be a place for them to feel culturally involved. Yes, comfortable, with everyone there. I would even like at the end, when they do these projects, maybe to have an education fair at the end of the year and have the community come to see. That would be beautiful. They might want to create their own books, or they might want to show their science project. I don't know, because it all depends inductively on what they create.
And also based on the book that they...
So different books, like on grade one, it's like it's just based on what I found, right? So the scientific method. For grade two, I found, Stephen Hawking is a scientist. Anyway, he passed, but his daughter, he wrote some books with his daughter. And it has to do with the solar system. And the boy, George, he's going through the solar system. And it's very exciting because all of a sudden he'll get shot to another planet. And so then they dispatch the planet. So who knows? I don't know what they're going to create. And then there's The Wrinkle in Time, which is the book that you got. And that book, it is about quantum physics, believe it or not. But the woman who studied the quantum physics, she made it accessible to children. And as everybody knows, there's plenty of movies. A Wrinkle in Time was written in 1962, and since then, many versions. The latest version is Oprah Winfrey. She's in there. So
for this program, is for English language learner, right?
Yes, unless, let's say, a native English speaker, the parents want their kids to be in a Spanish-speaking environment, they would be welcome, as far as I'm concerned, if you agreed. The idea is to focus on their skills in Spanish, so that it's a logical. So going back to how there's an achievement gap, right, in our schools, where those who are English language learners, especially Latinos in Philadelphia, there is a huge achievement gap between them and native English language speakers. Why? Well, I'm just telling you about the gap. They are at home speaking Spanish. They go to school, it's a completely different language. This gap needs to be closed. Well, we at Del Carmen can be the ones, that place they can go to fill that empty hole. They look at words on a page. It doesn't have to only be English. Then they don't have a connection with their language, right? They never learn how to read in their language.
Right. The language, it lost it, right? Some years, and I know a lot of Latin people that they don't speak Spanish, just they at the age that later on they only speak English, and it would be nice for them at early age and a critical age to learn Spanish, to be bilingual. So I think it's
the critical is a good point. And mom and dad speak to them in Spanish, they answer back in English, and then then it's like mom and dad are talking that language. It's almost not real to me, because, the real world is all in English. So there's not like an appreciation of value for it. Then goes into the culture, because a lot of the culture is in the language. So that's why also I'd like to have refreshments, other bilingual aids there, so that the whole community, it's a whole cultural environment for them, like a warm blanket to just, if that's what they want. Some kids might not want that, but I know that they regret it later. They turn 30 and they regret it. They lost something. So yeah, I mean, probably in hopes to keep that kernel, like you said, at that critical time. And then going back to the achievement gap. So if only 35% of the kids are reading at grade level, we can close that gap. We at Del Carmen can be part of that, And I would also like, if they're in college or they're in school, if they're a high school student, I would like them to be able to get school credit, right, for what it is that they're doing. So on those two levels, I really need support. And then, we want to have refreshments. So we have probably the space, because there is another organization that may be interested. And as we move forward and we develop a few years of experience doing this, then we can also apply for that grant, working then with other organizations.
That will be awesome if we give the opportunity to work with this organization. And
yeah, so then there's the question of books. Okay, so depending on how much money we have. So let's say we have limited funds. Then we buy the book for that grade level, and it has to be kept on the shelf in the room, because they can't take it home and keep it, because we have to use it for the next year, right? So that's one scenario. So if we have the funds, then they could keep their book. They could take it home and bring it back. So these are the kind of issues. We need also, we're going to have activities, and we're going to have, school supplies that are applied to the after school, crayons and pencils and, worksheets.
So we need funds. So notebooks for the viewers who are listening and seeing this program. We need support. We need financial resources to able to apply this bilingual project in Philadelphia. So this is great. Hopefully we can achieve that. And I don't have any doubt for us to do this.
With Carmen at the helm, I have no doubt that we are parts to do it.
So Francis, for this project that you have, how does that work? What is that project about?
Well, the idea is to create a culture in which the students are participating in their own learning. And I'm choosing reading because that is the most important skill for them to learn. But in this case, I want them, it might sound strange, but I want them to read in Spanish because that's their first language. And most kids learn, in any country, you learn how to read in your first language before you learn how to read in a second language. So I want the focus to be on reading in Spanish. And then there's a certain requirements about what type of books we would be reading.
Awesome. And you mentioned something about the mother tongue. Can you tell us a little bit about that one?
Yeah. So the concept is that whatever language your mother spoke to you, so some students, they don't count their language because their language is not an official language used in schools. So when I ask them what their language is, they might say, in this case, I'm thinking of a student, French. But then I have to ask them, well, is that the language your mother spoke to you when you were in her arms? Oh, no. And then they would say, oh, it's just a dialect, or it's not, right? So in this case, with Spanish speaking, if Spanish is the language of the mother tongue, that's the mother tongue, then I would like for them to be, that is the first language, that is their native language, right? Even if they speak English like a native speaker because they hear it on TV and they're sponges, they're kids, they learn quick. But there's a gap. My idea is that the achievement gap in the schools is just a reflection of the gap, psychological gap that's occurring when someone doesn't use their natural tongue to learn how to read first. There's something missing. So I want them to have that experience that we were blessed with having, because you learned how to read in Spanish. I learned how to read in English first. Yeah. So then I learned Spanish.
So, and it will be applied for these children that they are in a critical age when they are very young, as you say, they are fast learner, and they will read. We will teach them. We will read them in Spanish, so they will not lose that Spanish speaking tongue.
Right, but there's something more than that, and I think it's psychological. So I have students, for example, who now, because I'm doing some volunteer teaching, even though I'm retired, and so they're Spanish speaking, but you can tell that they never read in Spanish.
Wow.
So what happens is when I'm giving them, I'm an ESL, so English as a second language, or, English language learners, right? So when they look at a page of writing in English, they just get tired. And these are adults. They look at it and they just, oh, I can't read that. So we're trying to read graphic novels because you have a picture and stuff like that. But it's not that they don't understand each word. It's that they didn't develop a natural flow with reading in their own language. And I could tell that because they wrote a few things and I could see in their writing and that they didn't really learn.
Wow. So that's their native, like important.
When you're so critical, right, like that word.
Because I think, like, if they are an adult and for them it's a little harder to read in English, is because that was that gap that was not fulfilled when they were young.
Like a psychological gap that gets reflected in the achievement gap. It doesn't happen with everyone. Some people are stars reading in English, but it's still a gap for the person who's a star in English because they didn't get. Because how can they appreciate the richness of their language and culture if they're not able to read in it? And
this is amazing.
So they didn't know about it. It connects again then logically. So I think the achievement gap is a reflection of all this. So then it connects logically to the root memorization. So if they have this natural ability, aptitude then with reading, then their mind, it won't be just focused on memorizing. Their mind will be free to create. And where the critical thinking would come in, the imagination will come in. That's how people start businesses. They start ideas. They work at Google and they create, because they're not just focused on reading one word after the other and filling in the blank. So
great. So for us, for the Carmen Foundation, to fill this gap, what the resources do you need?
So we need bilingual aids.
Right.
If you speak Spanish and you would like to volunteer, we would be having small groups of children, 3 to 5. Don't feel intimidated like you have to teach Spanish. Don't feel intimidated. It's not that. What you're doing, there's a graphic kind of novel type idea, and you're reading together and you're talking about it. So it's not intimidating. You can imagine that you're playing. So if you're bilingual and you can read Spanish and you'd all be reading together, doing activities together. And so we really need that. And we would like to, if we had a grant, to give stipends to the volunteers.
Yeah.
We'd also like to give college credit or other kind of academic credits to the volunteers, right, and refreshments.
And so grants are a key component for us to apply this innovative program for children and youth. And your program is not only small children. It's from K3 to teenagers, right? We can apply this program to.
Well, this program can be applied throughout the board, you know. So I was trying it out with adults. Also, I'm still doing that now with the example I gave. But because the specific grant that we're focusing, because in Philadelphia, the goal is for children to be able to read at grade level by 4th grade. We're focusing on kindergarten through 3rd grade.
Well, that is for that project.
Oh, yeah, for that project. But this idea, yes, I've been trying it with high school age children, with college. Yeah, now I'm working with adult education.
Is there anything else that you would like to mention before we finish this interview?
Yes, you know, think about the children. Like, we're on our cell phones and doing stuff, and the kids are there. Who's spending time with them after school, you know? We would like to be with them from 3 to 6 p.m. During the school year, and then in the summer. In the summer, it would be all day. So we want to spend the day with them. We want to sit down and read with them and play with them. And so thinking about them, because they are our future.
Right, they are the next generation. And we so support that.
Yeah, we can't overlook them because we're trying to, I know, yes, everybody has to go to work. And so that's why the Carmen Foundation is here. We want to be there for them. That's what we want to do. So think about them.
Awesome. Thank you, Francis, for being here with us. And thank you for the passion that you have for education and to make this world a better place. So thank you so much. Thank you.
No more shadows in your way. Through the darkness, find your light. Del Carmen says you'll